The air above the ruined plains shimmered with firelight as the remnants of the human rebellion staggered forward, their ragged boots crunching over glass soil. Smoke from orbital strikes still clawed the horizon, glowing red against the fading twilight. Lyra moved at the front, her chest still faintly illuminated by the alien shard embedded within her. It pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat, each glow a reminder that she was no longer just human. She had felt it during the last battle. The way the shard connected her to the tower, the way it made her hear whispers not carried by air but burned into thought. Now those whispers were louder. They hissed of war, of a storm coming, of enemies that no fleet could stand against. Darren limped beside her, bandaged arm bound tight, yet his eyes never left her. He knew she was changing. Sometimes, in the stillness between firefights, he caught her gazing at nothing, lips parted as if listening to voices only she could hear. Other times, her presence alone seemed to ripple the air around her. The soldiers trailing them, rebels hardened by loss and years of hiding, looked at her not just with loyalty, but with awe and perhaps a trace of fear. They had seen her burn a platoon of alien warriors to ash without lifting a weapon. That power meant hope, but it also meant she was becoming something beyond them. Their path led toward the ruins of an old communications citadel, a broken spine of steel thrust up from the cracked earth. It was said to house one of the last deep-core vaults where humanity once stored ancient signals, codes, and memories from before the fall. If they could reach it, perhaps they would find a key, something to rally the scattered survivors hiding in different corners of the system. But Lyra knew the Hive would come. They always came. The crystal in her chest beat faster as if it, too, was aware of being hunted. As night settled, the rebels dug into the fractured hallways of the citadel, setting sentries and lighting controlled fires for warmth. Lyra sat against a rusted wall, staring at the stars beyond the collapsed roof. She remembered her father's voice, soft and weary, telling her once, "Stars will not save us, Lyra. They're only reminders of how small we are. What saves us is standing when no one else will." She clenched her fists, the memory burning with the ache of everything she had lost. For a moment, her chest burned brighter, casting shadows that danced like spirits on the ruined walls. Darren crouched next to her. "You're holding back." His tone was quiet, almost accusing. Lyra didn't look at him. "If I don't know what happens to me." He studied her, then leaned closer. "You think you'll lose yourself, but you're wrong. You're still you. It's the shard that should be afraid. You're stronger than it." Before she could reply, the ground beneath them rumbled, a deep vibration that sent dust raining from the ceiling. Shouts erupted as scouts rushed in, faces pale. "Movement! East perimeter. Not patrols, it's a swarm." Lyra rose instantly, her pulse sinking with the shard's sudden flare. Outside the citadel, the horizon began to writhe with unnatural light. Thousands of Hive soldiers advanced in perfect silence, their black forms glinting under the moon, weapons humming with a chorus of death. Above them, shadowed carriers blotted out the stars. And in the center of the swarm, rising taller than all others, came a figure cloaked in living fire, molten veins glowing like rivers of hell. Lyra's throat tightened. She had seen this presence before in flashes, visions burned into her by the shard. An overlord, not just a commander, but something deeper, an echo of the Hive's endless will. The rebels around her faltered, some whispering prayers, some staring in numb terror. Darren gripped her shoulder hard. "Lyra, whatever happens, you can't run this time. You have to stand." The shard pulsed, hot and searing against her bones. The whispers in her head became screams, alien voices shrieking both warning and command. She staggered, clutching her chest, caught between fear and a surge of unbearable strength. Around her, the swarm halted at the edge of the ruined plains. Then the Overlord raised a burning hand, and the silence shattered into war. The citadel walls shook as energy blasts lit the night. Human rifles cracked back, rebels screaming as they poured fire into the endless dark. Lyra's body convulsed as the shard flared, the power tearing at her veins. For a heartbeat, she saw not just the battlefield, but the deeper map behind it. A lattice of energy lines, conduits linking Hive soldiers to their master like threads in a web. She could see the Overlord's control, stretching across every soldier. And in that terrible vision, she understood. If she could burn the web, she could break them all. But doing so might mean burning herself with it. She raised her hands, eyes blazing with silver fire, as the swarm charged. The citadel erupted into chaos, firestorms of plasma tearing through ancient steel and stone as Hive soldiers surged in waves that seemed endless. Rebel gunfire cut arcs of light through the night, but each fallen alien was replaced by two more, advancing with inhuman precision. Screams echoed down the crumbling corridors as the old defenses buckled, dust falling like rain from the ceiling. Lyra stood in the shattered entryway, the glow of the shard in her chest intensifying until the shadows bent around her like ripples of heat. She could feel the enemy, not just their movement, but their intent, their collective hunger driving them forward. Each soldier was a fragment of one will, and that will belong to the Overlord standing beyond the battlefield, a blazing titan watching with eyes of molten fire. Darren pulled rebels back from the breach, barking orders, his voice raw with fury. Form a line. Don't let them inside. But already, Hive warriors poured through openings like black water, claws and rifles shredding human resistance. He turned just in time to see Lyra take a step forward, her face illuminated by light that wasn't fire, wasn't human. Lyra, wait. She didn't wait. Her hand rose, trembling with effort, and the shard within her pulsed. The battlefield lit with silver arcs that seared across the air, cutting into the swarm with invisible force. Hive soldiers convulsed mid-stride, collapsing as their energy conduits snapped like broken wires. The rebels froze for a moment, stunned at the impossible sight. Dozens of Hive lay in heaps, smoking, their armor fused to their bodies. Lyra staggered, panting, as the shard's heat burned through her chest like molten glass. But the Overlord did not falter. Instead, it lifted one burning arm, and the swarm adjusted, their formation hardening. Lyra gasped as her vision flared with images, threads connecting every soldier back to their master, each line glowing with alien energy. The Overlord spoke without words, its voice a pressure in her skull. You are ours. You were chosen. You cannot resist what you already are. Lyra screamed and dropped to her knees, clutching her head as whispers roared louder. She saw flashes, cities burning under Hive fire, children buried in rubble, her father's face staring up from the ash, his voice whispering the same phrase over and over. Stand, Lyra. Stand. Tears cut down her dirt-streaked cheeks as the memories blurred with the Overlord's pull, her grief mixing with rage until the shard pulsed with violent rhythm. Darren fought his way back to her, his gauntlet shattered, blood running down his arm. He dropped beside her, gripping her shoulders, his voice raw. Listen to me. Don't give control. You're not their weapon. Lyra, you're ours. You're you. His face was so close, she could feel the tremor of his breath, see the grit in his eyes. If you burn for us. For humanity. For everyone who died. Do you hear me? Her vision flickered, the alien threads stretching across the swarm. She saw the web again, every soldier tied to the Overlord. Her lips trembled. If I cut the web, they all fall. Darren's grip tightened. Then cut it. Do it. Don't hold back. She rose slowly, shaking, her arms glowing as if her veins were filled with fire. The shard blazed through her chest, silver light bursting outward until the entire battlefield glared like a second sun. Hive soldiers hesitated, their movements faltering for the first time. The Overlord tilted its head, molten eyes narrowing. Then it raised both arms and sent a wave of searing energy toward her. The blast struck like a meteor, tearing through walls, hurling rebels into the air. Dust and fire choked the sky, and Lyra disappeared in the explosion. For a heartbeat, the rebels thought she was gone. Screams of despair tore from their throats as Hive soldiers advanced again, climbing over the wreckage. But then the smoke cleared. Lyra stood at the center of the impact crater, untouched, her body wreathed in silver flame. Her eyes glowed with unbearable brilliance, and the shard's pulse shook the ground. The Overlord's energy had not destroyed her. It had awakened something deeper. She raised her hands, and the web lit up in her sight again. This time she did not hesitate. Her scream was both human and more than human, a cry of defiance that split the night. Light surged from her chest like a tidal wave, racing across the battlefield, snapping threads of control one by one. Hive soldiers convulsed, weapons dropping as they staggered, their Hive link torn apart. Hundreds collapsed at once, their bodies twitching as the web unraveled. The rebels roared in triumph, surging forward with renewed fire, cutting down the disoriented Hive. But Lyra swayed, her knees buckling under the force she had unleashed. Darren caught her as she stumbled, his arms around her trembling frame. Her voice was barely a whisper. "It's not enough. The web, it runs deeper than this. The Overlord isn't alone. There are more." And as if to answer her, the Overlord stepped forward into the glow of her power, utterly unshaken. Its molten eyes burned brighter, and in its shadow, new forms emerged, dark titans larger than anything they had faced, their bodies wrapped in fire and smoke. Lyra's breath caught as she felt the shard scream inside her. This was only the beginning. The ground split open at the Overlord's feet, and from the depths rose something vast, a structure of alien design that pulsed with the same light as the shard within her chest. It was a beacon, a tower of the Hive, and it had just awakened. The citadel shuddered as the alien beacon erupted skyward, its spires unfolding like blades piercing the storm. Each segment locked into place with grinding force, releasing waves of energy that rippled across the battlefield. The rebels staggered back, shielding their eyes as the air itself seemed to scream. Lyra clutched at her chest, the shard inside burning hotter with every pulse from the tower. It wasn't just responding to her, it was calling to her. The Overlord spread its molten arms, basking in the surge. Alien glyphs carved into its armor blazed to life, and through Lyra's heightened senses she could feel the tide shift. The threads of the Hive web, the same one she had cut only moments ago, recoiled and reknit themselves, flowing into the beacon's core. The swarm began to rise again, twitching back to motion with horrifying speed. "No," Lyra whispered, her voice trembling. "It's using the beacon to rebuild the web." Her knees wavered, but she forced herself to stand. Darren grabbed her arm to steady her. His jaw was set like iron, his eyes fixed on the towering construct. "Then we break the damn thing before it finishes." Easier said than done. Already, the beacon was protected by waves of Hive warriors larger and stronger than the rest, black-armored titans wielding energy halberds, their movements eerily synchronized. Their eyes glowed with the same molten fire as their masters. Every swing of their weapons left molten trails in the air, and the ground shook under their advance. The rebels scrambled to form lines, but panic ate through the ranks. Plasma fire splashed uselessly against the Titan's armor. Men screamed as halberds cut through trenches like paper, severing bodies in one motion. Lyra could feel the morale breaking as fear spread like wildfire. And then the whispers returned. The Overlord's voice, vast and suffocating, pressed against her mind. "You are bound to us. The shard is not a gift. It is a leash. You are the lock, and the beacon is the key. When the circuit closes, you will be ours forever." Her breath caught, heart slamming against her ribs. She saw it in her mind, the beacon connecting to her shard, completing the circuit, binding her will to the Hive. She would become their weapon, not against choice, but by design. Darren's voice cut through the storm, furious and defiant. "Lyra, look at me. You're stronger than their chains. You've already broken them once. Do it again." She tore her gaze from the beacon, meeting his eyes. His face was smeared with ash and blood, but the fire in him burned steady. He had no shard, no alien gift, and yet he stood unbroken. That was what made him terrifying to the Hive. That was what humanity was. Her grip on his arm tightened, her voice low, almost feral. Then we burned the beacon. All of it. Darren gave a single nod. I'll get you close. The plan was suicide, but they had no other choice. Together, they surged into the chaos. Rebels fought tooth and claw to clear the path, sacrificing themselves against Titans just long enough to give Lyra and Darren an opening. The beacon loomed closer, its surface alive with shifting runes, arcs of alien energy crackling between its spires. Every pulse dragged harder at the shard in her chest, threatening to tear her apart. They reached the outer ring just as a Titan descended in front of them, halberd cleaving down like a thunderbolt. Darren shoved Lyra back, his broken gauntlet raised to intercept. The impact shattered what little remained of the armor, hurling him across the ground. Lyra screamed his name, rage boiling through her. Without thinking, she raised her hand, and the shard's light surged outward in a violent blast. The Titan froze mid-swing, its body convulsing as molten cracks spread through its armor. Then it exploded in a shower of blackened fragments. Lyra gasped, clutching her chest. The shard burned her alive, but the Titan was gone. Darren dragged himself up, coughing blood, his voice raw. Keep going, don't stop for me. But she did stop, only for a moment. Kneeling, she pressed her forehead to his, whispering, I'm not losing you. Not now. Their lips brushed, brief, desperate, before she rose again, fury and grief coiling together inside her. She turned toward the beacon, her entire body igniting with silver flame. She screamed and hurled herself forward, every step shaking the ground. The Overlord finally moved, its voice a thunder across the battlefield. Yes. Come to me. Complete the circuit. The beacon spires shifted as she approached, arcs of lightning reaching for her, threads of alien light seeking the shard. And deep inside her, something answered, not human, not alien, but both. Her vision blurred as she stumbled closer. The light of the beacon wrapped around her, threads latching into her veins, pulling her in. She could hear rebels screaming behind her, Darren's voice breaking as he called her name. And just as her hand brushed the beacon's surface, she felt it, a flood of alien knowledge slamming into her mind. Not words, but visions. The Hive's origin, the truth of a shard, a revelation so vast it shattered her breath. She saw what the shard truly was. And with that knowledge came terror, because the Hive hadn't created it. Humanity had. The revelation tore through her like lightning, images burning across her vision faster than thought. She staggered against the beacon, her scream drowned out by the storm of knowledge pouring into her. She saw laboratories buried deep beneath ruined Earth, human scientists carving light out of crystal, shaping fragments of a weapon they barely understood. She saw towers like the one before her, once human, now swallowed by alien hands. And at the center of it all, a betrayal. The shard had never been meant as salvation. It was meant as control. Humanity had tried to enslave the Hive, and failed. The Overlord's voice coiled around her like smoke, triumphant. Now you see, you are the echo of your creator's arrogance. A leash forged by their hands, reborn in ours. You cannot escape what you are. Lyra's knees hit the ground, her chest heaving, the shard pulsing like a second heart. The beacon's tendrils wrapped around her wrists, pulling her closer, embedding deeper. She felt her humanity slipping, her skin shifting with lines of alien light. Her thoughts fractured, half her voice screaming in terror, half whispering with the Hive's calm inevitability. Submit. Become whole. Darren's roar cut through the haze. He charged through the storm, plasma rifle spitting bolts in a Hive Titan's, his broken gauntlet glowing faintly from stolen power. Rebels followed him in a desperate surge, their battle cries jagged, raw, human. Lyra, fight it, he bellowed, his voice breaking on her name. Her eyes flicked to him, silver fire bleeding from her tears. It's inside me, Darren. I can't stop it. You can, he spat, hurling a grenade at the Titan, watching it vanish in fire. He sprinted, vaulting over a pile of corpses until he reached her. His hands cupped her face, forcing her to meet his gaze. You already cut their web. You broke their chains. That wasn't a Shar, that was you. Don't you dare forget it. The beacon screamed, its spires locking into final alignment. Threads of light lashed tighter around Lyra, dragging her upright. Her scream ripped across the battlefield as the circuit closed, her shard blazing in resonance with the beacon. For a moment, everything froze. The swarm halted mid-stride. The Overlord raised its arms in exultation. The rebels stared in horror. And then the tide shifted. Instead of the Hive's control flooding into her, Lyra's will surged outward. The shard twisted, responding not to alien command, but to her defiance. Silver light exploded across the battlefield, brighter than the sun, searing into every thread of the Hive web. Hive soldiers convulsed, their movements breaking apart. Titans dropped their weapons, roaring in agony as their molten cores cracked. The Overlord staggered, molten eyes flickering, its triumph twisting into rage. No, this is not possible. But Lyra wasn't finished. Her voice rose above the storm, jagged with fury and grief. This was never your leash. It was ours. Humanity made it, and I will make it burn. The beacon shuddered, cracks spreading across its spires as the shard inside her chest blazed beyond endurance. The ground shook violently, rubble cascading in waves. Darren pulled her back, shielding her body with his, as the beacon's light became a storm of fire. Rebels screamed both in terror and hope as the citadel itself trembled. The Hive swarm faltered, collapsing in waves. The Overlord roared, molten veins spilling fire across the ground as it lunged forward, clawed hands stretching toward Lyra. In the instant before its grasp closed, Lyra raised her hand. The shard's light poured out like a blade of pure will, slicing through the Overlord's arm at the elbow. The Titan reeled back, molten blood spraying, its scream shaking the air. Lyra's body convulsed with the force of it, the shard tearing her apart from the inside. Darren caught her as she fell, her chest glowing so brightly he could see her heart beating through her skin. She clutched his shirt with trembling fingers. It's too much. I can't hold it. He gritted his teeth, dragging her away from the collapsing beacon, his voice fierce and unyielding. Then don't hold it. Let it out. Give it everything. The beacon cracked down the middle, light spilling outward in rivers of fire. The ground split, swallowing whole squads of Hive. And Lyra, half conscious, half more than human, let the shard's power surge free. A blast of silver radiance consumed the citadel, washing across the battlefield, vaporizing Hive soldiers in an instant. The Overlord roared in fury, staggered, its molten frame cracking as pieces of its armor shattered away. The rebels shielded their eyes, watching as the impossible happened. The Hive's greatest stronghold was burning from within. But as the light tore across the land, Lyra's body went limp in Darren's arms, her glow fading. He shook her desperately, screaming her name into the storm, his voice ragged with terror. And deep in the distance, far beyond the citadel, other beacons flickered to life, one after another, across the horizon. Their light answered hers. The storm outside the shattered colony dome howled like the roar of 1,000 beasts, but it was nothing compared to the storm inside Lyra's chest. She moved fast through the wreckage, her boots crunching over glass and fragments of machinery that once had been the pride of humanity's first outpost on this forsaken world. Soldiers followed her, battered, half-broken, their eyes hollow but still burning with that impossible human fire. Ahead, the alien city pulsed with sickly light, its walls alive with shifting patterns that looked like veins beneath transparent skin. The great spires twisted upward like jagged teeth waiting to swallow the sky. Somewhere in that pulsating nightmare, her brother's signal flickered faint and broken, trapped inside the enemy stronghold. Every step closer drew her back into memory, not the kind she wanted, but the kind that clawed at her when she needed strength most. She remembered his voice when they were children, daring her to climb the forbidden towers back on Earth. His laughter ringing as she chased him up, always behind, always struggling to catch up. And now, he was ahead again, and if she failed this time, there would be no more laughter, no more chances. Only silence. A soldier caught up to her, his face smeared with blood. "Commander, they're shifting the walls. The city's alive. It knows we're here." His voice trembled, the words almost swallowed by the storm. Lyra didn't answer right away. She felt it too, the ground shifting beneath her boots, the architecture reconfiguring itself like a puzzle designed to keep them lost forever. She clenched her fists, forcing herself to keep moving, forcing her fear down into the pit of her stomach where it belonged. Then, from the shadowed fissures of the alien wall, shapes began to peel free. They were tall, armored in glimmering plates that rippled like liquid, their faces hidden behind blank masks without eyes. The soldiers raised their weapons, but Lyra raised her hand. "Wait!" Her command cut through the chaos like a blade. She had seen these ones before, always at the edges, watching, measuring. The Watchers. The others opened fire anyway, bolts of plasma crashing against the alien armor, lighting the storm in flashes of blue. But the Watchers didn't fall. They walked forward through the fire, as if the human weapons were nothing more than rain. One of them raised a hand, and the ground beneath her squad tore open, swallowing two soldiers whole into the living flesh of the city. Screams echoed, then went silent, the wall pulsing as if it had just fed. Lyra felt rage boil inside her, sharp and blinding. She drew her weapon, but then she heard something that froze her blood cold. A voice, faint, carried on the storm, broken by static but undeniable. Her brother. "Lyra." The sound came not from her comm, but from the Watchers themselves, their blank masks vibrating as if his words were their voices. Every soldier around her faltered. Weapons lowered. Terror spread like wildfire in their ranks. Lyra's hands shook, but she refused to let them see fear in her. She screamed above the storm, above the echo of her brother's stolen voice. "We don't run. Not today. Not ever." Then she charged, the storm exploding around her, the Watchers advancing with inhuman calm, and the alien city itself reshaping to swallow them whole. The charge slammed into the storm like steel against fire, every heartbeat louder than the thunder overhead. Lyra didn't feel the cold or the weight of her armor anymore, only the pounding surge of something older, something deeper, the kind of fury humanity carried when a universe tried to erase them. Her rifle barked, each shot ripping glowing fissures through the Watchers' shimmering armor, though it took more than bullets to slow them. One reeled back, not dead but staggered, and in that instant, her squad found their courage again. Plasma bolts lit the storm as men and women who had nothing left but defiance unleashed everything they had. But the city wasn't going to let them win so easily. Walls folded downward like jaws, slamming into the ground to cut off retreat. The streets retracted into twisting corridors, hurting the humans deeper, pushing them closer to the heart. The ground itself buckled and rose, tearing apart formation after formation. The soldiers stumbled but pressed forward. And through it all, the Watchers advanced in perfect unison, their blank masks flickering with the echo of her brother's broken voice, repeating his last words like a cruel mockery. "Run, Lyra. Run, Lyra. Run." Every echo sliced through her like a blade, but rage kept her upright. She carved a path, plasma bolts bursting like suns in her hands, and as the last Watcher fell, its body dissolving back into liquid metal, the ground trembled with something far worse. A low hum reverberated through the city, shaking the bones of every soldier. Symbols began to burn on the walls, lines of light racing upward into the spires until the entire skyline glowed like a second sun. Then the humming turned into a voice, not human, not alien, but something vaster, like the roar of an ocean inside her skull. It spoke in fragments of language that shouldn't have made sense, yet somehow her mind bent around it, forcing meaning into the noise. "You're not supposed to be here. You are not supposed to still exist. The soldiers fell to their knees, clutching their heads as blood dripped from their noses and ears. Lyra fought to stay standing, fists clenched, jaw locked, staring into the glowing veins of the city as if daring it to see her. Her vision blurred, her heart pounded like it was ready to burst, but she screamed into the storm. We exist because you failed to break us. You think you can erase us? You'll choke on us before you're done. The city answered with silence, so deep it hurt. Then, all at once, the spires bent inward. They were no longer towers but blades, folding toward the heart of the city like a cage, locking her and her squad inside. And in that silence, another voice joined the first, weak, broken, but familiar. Lyra, don't fight it. They'll use me to stop you. Her brother's voice, not mocking this time, not stolen, real. Her calm crackled with static, and tears blurred her eyes. She screamed into the storm again. Hold on, I'm coming for you. But when the static cleared, the voice that answered wasn't his. It was colder, sharper, edged with a cruelty that turned her blood to ice. He isn't yours anymore. He belongs to us. And as the walls closed in, Lyra knew the real battle hadn't even begun. The cage closed like a predator's mouth, spires bending inward until the sky was only a thin sliver above them, and the storm burned crimson against the narrowing light. The floor beneath Lyra's boots rippled, becoming liquid metal, and before she could react, it swallowed her squad mates one by one. Their screams were cut off mid-breath as they were dragged beneath the surface, faces vanishing into silver without a splash. Lyra lunged, fingers clawing at the nearest soldier's hand, but the metal hissed and burned her gloves, forcing her back. In seconds, she was alone, standing on a shrinking island of solid ground as the living floor rose up in curling tendrils, reaching for her like fingers. Then she saw him. At the center of the chamber stood a column of translucent glass, pulsing with light. Inside, suspended like an insect in amber, was her brother. His eyes were closed, face slack, but his hands twitched as if caught in a dream. Wires of liquid metal ran from the base of the column into his skin, fusing with his veins, and the light inside him flickered with every heartbeat. He was alive. He was being used, and he was the core of the trap. Lyra's rifle clattered to the floor. She could barely breathe as she stepped forward, boots splashing through the shifting surface. "I'm here," she whispered, though she didn't know if he could hear her. "I'm here. I'm getting you out." The city answered her with a pulse of light so bright it seared her vision. A figure stepped from the far wall, coalescing from the metal itself, taller than a human, its body a lattice of glimmering lines, its face a mask of flowing silver with no eyes, no mouth, just a smooth curve where features should be. When it spoke, the voice was the same oceanic roar she'd heard in her head. "You are not authorized to interfere with the continuum. Return to extinction." Lyra's hands trembled, but she didn't step back. The air was charged, humming against her skin, and the implant in her skull, the one she'd thought was just a neural enhancer, began to throb with a strange, hot rhythm. Her vision split into layers. She could see the lattice of energy binding her brother, the currents flowing through the walls, the threads of command pulsing in the floor. It was like the city had opened itself to her, and she could almost hear its hidden language. "You use him to bait me," she said, voice shaking but steady. "You think you can use him to break me, but you don't know what you've built inside me." The lattice being tilted its head. "The seed of your species is already here. It will end as all others ended." Lyra's implant flared like a sun. Memories not her own flickered behind her eyes. Flashes of battlefields she'd never seen. Towers crumbling under alien skies. Hands clutching strange weapons. Voices screaming in 100 tongues. Not dreams. Not hallucinations. Data. Memories stored in the city's own core. And somehow she could reach them. Her pulse matched the hum in the walls. The floor's tendrils lashed out, but she caught one in her hand, and instead of burning her, it dissolved like smoke, its energy flowing into her palm. The being stepped forward sharply. "Impossible." Lyra smiled without meaning to. It wasn't her smile. It was something older, sharper, borrowed from the fragments now alive inside her. Not impossible, she said softly. Human. She raised both hands, and the chamber screamed. The floor heaved upward as if struck by an earthquake, the spires above groaning as the cage bent outward. The wires fusing her brother to the column flickered and snapped one by one. His eyes fluttered open. For a heartbeat, she thought she saw him, truly him. But then the light inside his veins flared bright, and he arched in pain, mouth opening in a silent scream. Lyra, he gasped. It was his voice. Real, not stolen. Don't. But before he could finish, the column exploded, shards of glass spinning like razors. Energy ripped through the chamber, hurling Lyra back against the wall. Her brother collapsed into the silver floor, convulsing, and a lattice being lunged at her, arms splitting into jagged spears. She raised her hands instinctively, and a blast of white light erupted from her palms, slamming into the being. It disintegrated into a spray of molten shards. The floor rippled violently. The spires above cracked, beams of daylight stabbing into the chamber. Alarms like no human siren filled the air. She staggered to her feet, reached for her brother, and pulled him up. His skin was hot to the touch, his eyes flickering between human and alien. We have to go, she whispered. But when she looked up, she realized the city wasn't trying to stop them anymore. It was transforming. The walls folded into new shapes, the floor rising into a spiral staircase of living metal that led deeper, not out. And in her brother's eyes, alien light danced as a voice. Not his, whispered through his mouth. You can run no further. To save him, you must enter the heart. If you enter, you will never leave as you are. Lyra's hands tightened on his shoulders. The staircase pulsed like a heartbeat. Her implant burned in her skull. And for the first time, she hesitated. She could escape with him now, broken but alive, or she could follow the staircase and face whatever had built all of this, risking not only her life but her mind. Her brother's mouth moved again, the alien voice breaking into a plea that sounded almost like his own. Please, don't come after me. If you do, you won't be Lyra anymore. The staircase opened wider, glowing with a terrible, beautiful light. The air tasted like metal and ozone. Her pulse matched its rhythm. She stepped forward anyway, and as she did, the city whispered, "Welcome home." End of episode 5.